this computer. Okay, so far so good. I don't see any new names for tonight. Everybody looks rather familiar. Does anybody have anything that they're curious about asking about or care to offer? Been to the doctor who told you this is great or this is not good for you or whatever it might be? Nothing so far. There's a new name, I think. Was Edie. And I don't know about, does Roberta look familiar to you, Scott?
Yeah, that's a familiar name.
Okay. So yeah, I guess we'll just wait one more minute because people are still kind of logging on.
Yeah, we don't have our quorum yet. It's the usual summertime numbers are a little bit lower in the summer sometimes.
They are, no doubt about it.
Maybe I'll have to announce on the newsletter this next week that we won't be able to record next week, so maybe more people will show up.
That'll be interesting to see whether it makes a difference.
Because people that don't know, because I can track the numbers, we usually get 50, 60 views usually within a week or two of each week's class. So there's a lot of people that just watch them recorded, that's for sure.
Yeah. So we clicked on the closed captioning. So that's working okay. I'll try to get it out of the screen view. Hopefully it doesn't interfere too much. So now that we have just a couple more people on board. Okay, Jean, glad that the class closed captioning is working well. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the climate. We're going to be talking about how what we eat affects not only the climate, but the world we live in, not just the climate itself. Going to kind of take a deep dive into some of the reasons why raising livestock for our food can be problematic. And we'll see what your thoughts are when as we go through this. You can speak up as we're going along, or you can speak up at the end, or you don't have to speak up at all, actually. And totally up to you. And so why don't we go ahead and get started? Unless I'm going to ask one more time, anybody have anything that they would want to share or question or anything like that? Going once? Twice? 3 times? Okay, it's a quiet group today. Before I continue on, before the climate, I got to go over what I went over in the afternoon session today. And that's the confusion that I have had, and perhaps many of you have, over nitrites and nitrates. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you hear nitrites and nitrates are good for you. You want to get those in the dark green leafies that you eat because they combine with your saliva, and in your stomach they produce a compound. Anybody remember what it is? It's NO, nitric oxide. You've heard both Scott and myself and others talk about the benefits of nitric oxide. It keeps your arteries running smooth, sort of like a good oil in your life. Keeps them healthy. It dilates your arteries. It improves your blood flow, lowers your blood pressure. Nitric oxide, something we all want, but many of us don't get enough of because we're not eating plant foods that have nitrite and nitrate in them. So, okay, on one end, nitrites and nitrates, they're good. But then you read an article that says eating nitrites and nitrates is bad for your health. Anybody heard that?
I just know that they can cause migraines.
They can cause migraine perhaps, but they can also, they get converted sometimes, many times, into cancer promoting substances called nitrosamines. How does that happen? It doesn't tend to happen with plants. When you eat plants and you get your nitrites and the nitrates from plants, the chemical reactions involved create this nitric oxide. But when you combine nitrites and nitrates with animal products, they go down a different pathway, a chemical conversion that creates nitrosamines. These are the cancer promoting compounds. So when you see sodium nitrite or sodium nitrate in your foods that are processed, when you read the label, you say, ooh, those are the things that produce those nitrosamines, the cancer promoting things like hot dogs and bacon and smoked meats, the processed meats that are deemed carcinogenic by the World Health Organization. So you're going to see two different kinds of articles. One that says nitrates and nitrites are good for you. And then you're going to see that they're bad for you. And I hope my little session here kind of piques your interest enough for you to understand that when that they're not good for you when you're eating animal products. Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, did you talk in the 2 o'clock class about the you know, how it, like the processed meats will say, oh, nitrite free turkey or ham. It's like, actually it's not, because they put celery juice in it, and then the bacteria in your gut convert the celery juice into nitrates. So they say nitrate free, but it's really not nitrite free. It's nitrite free in the product, but the bacteria convert the celery juice into the active form. So it's still, you still get the bad stuff even when that packaged lunch meat says nitrite free.
And so why is that? There are several reasons why eating animal products makes a difference. One is the protein is less in plants, and protein can be important in terms of combining with this to form nitrosamines. The second is the heme. That's that red compound that you see in maybe red meats. Heme plus nitrite or nitrate becomes nitrosamine. And the third issue is the antioxidants that are in plants inhibit the formation of nitrosamines. So if you're eating plants, just plants with nitrate and nitrates, then you won't tend to produce the nitrosamines. Kind of interesting. You know, it was fun chemistry, learning about that. And that I just learned about that this week. I really didn't understand it. Now, guys like Scott, who've been doing a lifestyle medicine have their certification. They may have already understood that, but to me, it was kind of exciting this week to see that. Okay, any questions? Let's get on to climate change. We got our quorum here of at least 20. Pretty funny. Here we go. So I kind of like to start out with something that is a little less science and a little more emotional. Eating Our Way to Extinction. It's a film. If you haven't seen it, this is what it's about.
Our Earth. Ever in flow and motion. A dynamic symphony of forces, all working together. But in recent years, it's beginning to become clear that our world is poorly prepared to cope. And time is running out.
Every continent is burning. People are losing their homes, ecosystems are being destroyed. We're now over the line.
Over 26,000 species are currently threatened with extinction.
It doesn't even make the headlines. No one even knows about it.
There seem to be some serious conflicts of interest going on.
The industry is just concerned with growth.
This was the elephant in the room no one wanted to talk about.
I want others to see for themselves. This is all we've got. This little blue miracle.
This planet is our home, and it is up to us what happens now. History has shown that when we stand together, we can achieve great things. The clock is ticking.
So I'm going to stop for a moment and share with you what I told the kids, the junior high and high school kids. I told them that if we don't have a planet to live on, we could talk about how much we can reverse health and the good things that we can do, and how we can exercise more, stress less, avoid chemicals that harm us. But this has become one of the key issues in our life. And I think about what Dr. John McDougall, why he is changing his emphasis, or changed it from talking totally about starch and incorporating now, what are we going to do to prevent global warming and destruction of our planet. As you heard in this film, over 26,000 species are endangered. We are probably one of those species. And what I told the class today is I apologize to them because my generation has done nothing but talk about making some effort to actually decrease the likelihood that we continue to keep warming up as a planet. And if you think about this, your normal temperature is 98 6/10 degrees Fahrenheit. If you raise your temperature by 1.5 degrees centigrade, which is what the current calculation is that's going to happen to our Earth over the next, 15, 20 years. That would mean you'd have a temperature going around with normally at 102 5/10. How do you think you'd feel with that? Probably not too great. So it doesn't sound like much when you use centigrade, that the temperature is only going up a degree or maybe 2. but in reality, it's quite a significant rise, and it's something that we all can do something about. But so far, my generation has chosen to do nothing about it. And hopefully the younger generation, I told them, I hope your generation is bold enough to do something about this. And it's become not only a key issue in John McDougall's life and what he's promoting, but that's sort of an issue that keeps going round and round in my head. How do we help people change what they're doing so that my children and grandchildren will have a planet that is actually someplace that they will be able to live comfortably? And it's a very sobering concept if you think about it and you come to the conclusion no one is going to change, no one's going to do anything different. But I have hope that that's not the case. So let's get on to the next video here. And that is diet and climate change cooking up a storm. Let's see what Dr. Greger has to say.
One of the most prestigious medical journals in the world editorialized that climate change represents the biggest global health threat of the 21st century, and currently chronic diseases are by far the leading cause of death. Might there be a way to combat both at the same time? For example, riding our bikes instead of driving is a win-win-win for people, planet, and pocketbook. Good for us, the environment, and cheaper too. Are there similar win-win situations when it comes to diet? Well, the same foods that create the most greenhouse gases appear to be the same foods that are contributing to many of our chronic diseases. Meat, fish, eggs, and dairy were found to have the greatest environmental impact, whereas grains, beans, fruits, and vegetables had the least impact. And not only did the foods with the heaviest environmental impact tend to have the lower nutritional quality, but also a higher price per pound, thereby scoring that win-win-win scenario. The European Commission, the governing body of the European Union, commissioned a study on what individuals can do to help the climate. In terms of transport, if Europeans started driving electric cars, it could prevent as much as 174 million tons of carbon from getting released. We could also turn down the thermostat a bit, maybe put on a sweater. But the most powerful thing people can do, shift to a meat-free diet. What we eat may have more of an impact on global warming than on what we drive. Even just cutting out animal protein intake one day of the week could have a powerful effect. So even just like meatless Mondays may beat out working from home all week and not commuting. And a strictly plant-based diet may be better still, responsible for only about half the greenhouse gas emissions. Overall, studies have suggested that moderate dietary changes are not enough to reduce impacts from food consumption drastically. Changes to healthier diets without significant meat and dairy intake reductions may only result in rather minor reductions of environmental impacts. This is because the average fossil energy input for animal protein production systems is like 25 calories of fossil energy input for every 1 calorie produced, more than 11 times greater than for grain protein production, for example, which is down around 2 to 1. Researchers in Italy compared 7 different diets to see which one was environmentally friendliest. They compared a conventional omnivorous diet adhering to dietary guidelines to an organic omnivorous diet, conventional vegetarian, organic vegetarian, conventional vegan, and organic vegan to what the average person actually eats. For each dietary pattern, they looked at carcinogens, air pollution, climate change, effects on the ozone layer, the ecosystem, acid rain, and land, mineral, and fossil fuel use, and this is what they came up with. This is how many resources it took to feed people on their current diets. and this is the negative effects the diet is having on the ecosystem and the adverse effects on human health. Now, if they were eating a healthier diet, conforming to the dietary recommendations, the environmental impact would be significantly less. An organic omnivorous diet would be better, similar to a vegetarian diet of conventional foods, beaten out by an organic vegetarian diet, conventional vegan, and organic vegan diet. The Commission report described the barriers to animal product reduction, largely lack of knowledge, ingrained habits, and culinary cultures. Proposed policy measures include meat or animal protein taxes, educational campaigns, and putting the greenhouse gas emissions info right on food labels. Climate change mitigation is expensive. A global transition to even just a low-meat diet, as recommended for health reasons, could reduce these mitigation costs. A healthier low-meat diet would cut the cost of mitigating climate change from about 1% of GDP by more than half. A no-meat diet could cut 2/3 of the cost, and a no-animal product diet could cut the cost 80%. But many aren't aware of the cow in the room. It seems that very few people are aware that the livestock sector is one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, but that's changing. The UK's National Health Service is taking a leading role in reducing carbon emissions. Patients, visitors, and staff can look forward to healthy, low-carbon menus with much less meat, dairy, and eggs. For evidence shows that, as far as the climate is concerned, meat is heat. The Swedish government recently amended their dietary recommendations to encourage citizens to eat less meat. Even if we seek only to achieve the conservative objective of avoiding further long-term increases in greenhouse gas emissions from livestock, we are still led to rather radical recommendations, such as cutting current consumption levels in half in affluent countries, an unlikely outcome if there were no direct rewards to citizens for doing so. Fortunately, there are such rewards, or important health benefits. By helping the planet, we can help ourselves.
So I'm going to stop the share for a moment, come back to the room, and see if anybody has a thought on if you've never heard this before, if this is new, if it's old. Do you believe it? Don't you believe it? Any thoughts from anybody? I guess I need to go back to view so I can kind of see who's in the gallery.
The first thing I thought of was the loss of employment.
So
they're and profits. So they're more, whoever they are more important to them than saving the world.
you mean the food companies or maybe government agencies or whatever it might be? Yeah, so profit is a significant driver to the recommendations that we have in our country, because the food industry is highly represented.
They can hear you.
Oh, they can? That's like 10 out of 10.
Yeah, they can hear. Cheryl, did you have something to add?
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Did you have something to add?
So, okay, no, I've never heard that before. I know about profit, but my thinking is that the profit comes from those that are healthy. Because if you're in a healthy state, healthy mind, you're able to make profit.
So that's
because the people are in a healthy state. So that means they're not missing work. That means they're not missing.
There would be no work.
How could it not be work?
If they put all the meat industry out and quit doing it, or the chicken industry out, there's thousands of people right here in our own country that wouldn't have a job.
So that brings us to, how do you transition from one type of an economy to another? Because even though, yes, if you go from day one and the following day, you have no more dairy, meat, egg industry, all those people would be out of work. But if you formulate a transition where those workers their farms are transitioned to producing grains for the world, the grains that maybe we're not getting from Ukraine at this point in time, that we actually use to feed humans. People can use their creativity in various ways, and it takes leadership to figure out how to create jobs, to take these people who have been displaced out of their job. And you're right. If you go from day one to day two and it all changes, that's difficult. So it does need to be likely a gradual change, but there at least needs to be a plan in place. Like maybe giving jobs to create and improve the infrastructure in our country. Of course, that takes money to do that. I think there's funding available for that, and people can transition. We somehow figure out a way to spend a lot of money on war stuff, and yet we have a difficult time transitioning to what is going to really save our planet. So at some point, we have to kind of make some sacrifices and do what needs to be done to stop the blanket, this carbon dioxide and methane gases that we're throwing into our environment. We have to figure out a way to stop that. Or
because what would be the difference between them, modifying our food and meat,
what would be the difference modifying our food?
Because they're doing it now.
Oh, well, the difference, if you modify the food and you do these artificial plant foods, let's say, you're not raising livestock, you're not cutting down forests, you're not, the forests are what are kind of taking the carbon out of the air and putting it back into the ground. So if you're eliminating animals as a food source, you are really saving the environment. Even though the foods may not be the healthiest, if you're making them artificial, you could transition the industries that are currently involved in livestock manufacture, so to speak, to other kinds of foods, growing avocados.
Yeah, and the big companies are doing it. Tyson and all the big meat manufacturers are starting to produce plant-based alternative meats because there's a demand for it. So they just follow the money, and as long as there's more of us starting to transition people away from the standard American diet to a more plant-based diet, even if it's, like Charlie said, not the healthiest, some of these processed plant-based meats aren't the healthiest option, but when it comes to the planet, they're a great option when it comes to the planet. So there is a growing demand for that. You see all the nut milks that are out there in the market now, and all the plant-based products, meat products, alternative meat products there are around the world. It's a growing thing.
Put people back to work, and even if they should leave, and I grant you, I'm not saying all of a sudden you drop and fall. No, that is not what I'm saying. Everything has to take a process when it's so far away from being from being so imperfect or so diluted. But within this process, it can cause better repercussions from people, from the planet, from the earth, because everything has to take a process and change. Change is never easy, but change can be done. And especially if the demand becomes high, very high, and it is. It's growing, probably not as much as we would like it, but it is growing. And people want something different. They want healthy food. Not a lot want to change, because change is not easy. But for the most part, people do want more life. They want more health. They want more of a better feeling to life with purpose.
I agree that they want a better life and a life with purpose and those things. But I must tell you, so many people that I ask, what are you eating? Tell me, I eat healthy. And then I ask them the question, what does that mean you eat healthy? You know, what do you eat actually for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And so what do you think I hear? Those packaged cereals, the animal products, the high fat kind of things, the cheese. They think cheese is really a healthy food. And so that's the sad part about this all, is the misinformation, the myths that people live under that we're trying to bust in our own minute little way, you know, a little bit at a time.
I
And
know it's hard for me. Don't get me wrong. I've heard this all my life. I mean, born and raised and bred. What can I say? But I want change, and I know it's going to be a process, just like it would be for everyone else.
well,
the big,
go ahead.
I'd say the big challenge, where we have to, one of the ways we have to start, not only by just demanding healthier food and eating maybe some of the alternatives when we're just focusing on the environment. Besides that, the other is we have to actually make people pay for food what it actually costs to produce. And so if we actually, some of you may or may not know this, if you actually paid what it costs to make a Burger King Whopper, it would be $24. A Burger King Whopper should cost $24 for one burger, if that's the actual cost to produce that product. But because we subsidize, our government, our tax money subsidizes the meat and dairy industries, because of that, that's why it's on the dollar menu, because we're paying for it out of our government and our taxes, it's subsidized, and then we're paying for it on the flip side with our healthcare costs, because it's making everybody sick. So the system is flawed in that it basically rewards the production of the unhealthiest food, and the unhealthiest food is the worst food for the planet. And so the irony is, hey, this is another reason to go whole food plant-based, is because, like Dr. Greger said, it's a win-win-win. So it's not only is the food that it's cheap to produce, much cheaper to produce, but then it's also good for our healthcare. It's going to reduce our healthcare costs, and it's going to be good for the environment. So the thing is that dollar menu food should be really expensive. Only the richest people would be able to afford the dollar menu food, and then that would leave the beans, the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, all that would be what the rest of us eat. Kind of like it was if you went back in a time machine 200 or 300 years and went to some rural place, rural China, rural Africa, someplace like that. Only the rich people are eating the meat and the dairy and the processed stuff. And the rest of us, everyone else that can't afford it is eating the beans, the whole grains, the rice, the vegetables, things like that. The food that's cheap. So really going and eating healthfully the way we're teaching in these classes should be really cheap, and then eating the standard American food should be really expensive. That no one would be able to afford it. And then a lot of times you'll hear the argument, well, if you start shifting it that way, stop subsidizing the unhealthy foods, then the inner city poor populations won't be able to afford it. Well, that's actually good, because now you got to get in the food that they should be eating, the food that's making them sick, and the health disparities that they have in those food deserts and inner city places. They won't be able to access fast food because it's going to be too expensive. And so we can start bringing in growing community gardens and starting to, and maybe even subsidize fruits, vegetables, beans, whole grains. So it's really affordable, and that'll make people healthy. And that's what the people will be able to eat. Is you want to subsidize the healthy food, not subsidize the unhealthy food. So it's a big problem, but.
Yes, it is. Okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's a good discussion.
You don't need to be sorry. We're happy to have you discuss this. And I'm glad 25 of you have shown up to kind of give some thought to this as to what we all might do to help save ourselves and save our planet. And if your jaw didn't drop when you heard Scott's $24 burger charge, mine did, like, OMG, you know. I try to make a little pun on where he works, but it's pretty fantastic. And somewhere along the line needs to be changing what our current system is all about. And I'm not saying to do that with AR-15s. I'm not that kind of guy, but you know, through the ballot box, however we're going to do it, basically, that's how we're going to do it, is by voting in people who actually understand the benefits of this. People like in New York, who is it, Adams? Can't remember his name. Who really get it.
Eric Adams.
Eric, yeah. Eric Adams.
And Emmy Riley has something to, or did you want?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, part of the whole dynamic here that has to happen, and we seem to be going in the other direction, is the good of the group has to matter. You know, our community needs to matter, not just us. I mean, I need to eat better for me, but I also need to eat better for my community.
Yes, good thought. And that thought process is used more in the Scandinavian countries as examples. Sweden, Denmark, Norway, they tend to focus on, you know, how do we get healthcare for everyone? How do we get education for everyone? Sweden has said we need to eat less meat. They're getting that concept.
It seems that the only time in this country we see that kind of community anymore is when there's a huge catastrophe. You know, I'm reminded of the days after 9/11, how our country pulled together.
Yes.
You know, so I wound up having to drive across the country that week after that. And I was just sort of blown away by the true patriotism and by the people who really extended a hand to anyone they could, because things were tough. And you don't see that much anymore. This me thing is big.
That me goes along also with the selfies and, you know, how important we are as opposed to how we help each other. So, yeah, that's good thoughts. All right. Anybody else have anything they want to add before I go on to the next issue?
Just, Charlie, I'd like to add that.
Yes, Debbie.
Lots of the farmers are not doing well, and they're beholden to, you know, the producers, their seed people and their tractor people. And so it's not like the farmers don't want change too. They're in debt up to here. And so it's the big corporations that are really making the money from our farmers. And Cheryl, I really appreciate your comments. Thank you. I feel like change is difficult, and the best models I've seen are when we concentrate on how can we help these people transition to something that's sustainable for them. And, you know, so I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, Cheryl.
And I do that. I went into my doctor's health, my health coach, I call him. And, oh, I'm sorry, the health coach, I call him. But I wanted him to talk to my granddaughter because it has to start somewhere. It has to start, I mean, it starts with me, but it has to start with those that are closest to us. That's how I feel. Because those that are closest to us, they spread and other people are like, well, so why? They have questions too, but just kind of getting it into her head, the importance of eating properly, eating right. Not just hearing it from me, but from somebody who knows what they're talking about. Starting somewhere is better than not starting nowhere. That's how I feel.
Well, if their provider doesn't want to give them information, they can log on to a class, archived class, and listen to what some healthy choices really are based on the science.
Well, she is now, but I still want him. He's agreed to talk to her, and I was very, very happy with that because it's
Great.
not just me. It's not just me talking. It's someone who knows what they're talking about.
Well, we're trying to get you educated so you can talk to them also.
I'm trying. It's a work in progress, but I'm working on it.
It's taken us many years, so keep working on it. Anybody else have any other thoughts? Okay, we're going to carry on and let's see what the next video has to say. I have a couple more videos that I want to share with you, but before I go to those, I want to share this PowerPoint real quickly. When I say real quickly, you know that takes a few minutes. So what does food have to do with our environment? What if changing what we eat not only improved our personal health, but also improved the health of our planet? Could we change and would we change? That's really the answer that we're looking for. And each of us may have a different answer to that. I know we could change. I'm not sure we would all change. So the American Medical Association in 2017 came out with a resolution that's co-sponsored by the American College of Cardiology that to improve the health of patients, staff, and visitors, all hospitals should be providing variety of healthy foods, including plant-based meals that are low in fat, sodium, and added sugars, and eliminating processed meats from the menus. We talked about why to eliminate processed meats because of the carcinogenic effects, and providing and promoting only healthful beverages. And then there are a number of organizations which we've gone over in the past. Many countries in their guidelines are promoting plant-based diets. And even the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists now recommend plant-based diet, American Diabetic Association in 2018, American Institute for Cancer Research. So, there are many organizations that are actually getting this concept, but we just haven't made the transition yet. We all know that there are root causes of disease, what we eat, how we move, the chemicals we choose, and how we deal with stress. That includes sleep and social contacts. And then our food sources have changed. You all saw this way back in the beginning classes, but it's kind of fun to review. And it's kind of really brings to light why we have such a problem with obesity in the 2000s. Compared to the 1900s. Look at 1900, the average American used to eat 5 pounds of sugar per year. Average American is up to 77 pounds of sugar per year, and that's in 2010. It may be even more now. Oils and fats, we used to eat 4 pounds per year. Now we're up to 74 pounds per year. If that doesn't make your eyes bug out, I don't know what will. And the same with cheese. 2 pounds has gone to 30 pounds per year. add up the difference between these and these, and you'll come up with a reason as to why we have an obesity epidemic, diabetic problems, hypertension, arthritis, all the chronic illnesses we deal with. And look at the fruits and vegetables. We used to grow 131 pounds per year in our garden on the average. We're down to 11 pounds per year. And the calorie intake has gone up 600 calories a day. The nutrient density, the foods that keep us, our immune system boosted, keep us from getting sick. They've decreased by 40 to 60%. And then the fiber, we've talked about this a lot. The average American's getting 14 to 16 grams of fiber a day now, but in 1900s, it was 60, 80 grams a day, maybe up to 100. So we're really deficient in this fiber. And of course, people ask, how do you get enough protein? And if you compare 500 calories of plant food with 500 calories of animal food, you find that the protein content is identical. The volume is considerably different. One fits in the palm of your hand like animal food. That's 500 calories, but the plant food, you probably need a small volleyball to get 500 calories. Yet the plant 500 calories has so many more nutrients, beta carotene, vitamin C, folate, iron, magnesium, calcium. Look at how much more prevalent in this side, which are the plant foods. And look at how much fiber there is in animal products, 0 compared to 31 grams of fiber in the plants. So, you know, it really is important to help people understand the benefits to eating plants. Global causes of warming. We spend a lot of time talking about fossil fuel, the car you drive, the gas you use. And, you know, with the gas prices as they are now, people are saying, hey, it would be good to have an electric car. But have you ever checked the prices on those electric cars? A lot of people can't afford that. But could they afford to transition their diet from chicken, fish, steak, and cheese to beans, rice, lentils, quinoa, soy, fruits, and vegetables? Yes, they could. A lot easier than having to buy a new car. Foods that are wasted contribute to global warming. They break down and throw either carbon monoxide or methane gas up into the air. And the foods we choose are just so very important. So the standard American diet has ill effects not only on our own health, but on global warming, on the water resources in our country, the land resources, and even on viral pandemics. So there's a couple graphics here, but as far as the global warming, about a quarter of the greenhouse gases come from what we eat. About a quarter comes from the transportation that we use. So it's a significant amount. If we were to transition our diet from animal products to plants, we would save a considerable amount of global warming issues. The diets of meat eaters create 7 times the greenhouse emissions as the diets of vegans. So something to consider. Water, it takes nearly half of all the water used in the United States goes to raising animals for food. We could use that water to raise food for us and for the world rather than having the middlemen animals. We can replace those as we don't need them. It takes more than 2,400 gallons of water to produce a pound of meat, but 1 pound of wheat takes only 25 gallons. So we really are using up a lot of our water resources, and they are not infinite. It seems like they are with the oceans, but because they're salted oceans, it's not so easy to get the water out of them. It's a pretty expensive project. And the groundwater that we're getting our water is something that we really can use up. So a vegan diet requires 300 gallons of water a day. And I guess I would change that vegan to a whole food plant-based diet versus a meat-eating diet, which requires 4,000 gallons of water a day. So you'd save more water by not eating 1 pound of meat than you would by not taking a shower for 6 months about. You don't have to believe the statistics, but I've had them checked by some environmental guy down in Roseburg who sent me the slides and said that they seem accurate to him. And same way with the land resources. Raising animals for food uses 30% of the Earth's land mass, cuts down a lot of land, forested land, which actually was taking CO2 out of the air and reduces the heating effect. So we really should take that in consideration when we choose what we're eating. And then when you feed chickens 100 calories of grain, you only get back about 12 calories of chicken. Now, beef returns only 3 calories. So there's a huge inefficiency in using animals as a food source. We've done it for years. It's something our parents did, our grandparents did, not quite to the same extent that we do, however. And it's time for us, with the population we have on the earth and the way we're using up our resources, it's time for us to really consider what do we need to do differently. And you say, well, it's hard to do. Well, it's hard to figure out how to prevent Russia from overtaking Ukraine. But somehow people got together, they decided in the world countries to kind of work together. Whether it's going to be successful or not, I hope it is. But that's the sort of effort that we need. We need to be getting together with other countries and working together to solve this worldwide problem. It's not just the United States problem any longer. So your food choices affect water and land and other environmental issues. By helping the planet, we can help ourselves. And let's see. I don't think I have to go over this again. There's some resources that I put on here for people. They might be interested in looking at some videos and reading about it. There's some good books. And then there's a questions. I came up with a few of them. How are we going to reduce carbon in the atmosphere? We could do it 2 ways. One is don't put so much carbon in the air, and the other is to take carbon out of the air. Taking carbon out of the air involves planting more green trees and vegetation to pull that out, and reducing our reliance on animal products would reduce the carbon thrown into the air. 10,000 years ago, deserts were not deserts on our earth. What happened? Well, what happened is we cut those deserts were filled with trees. We cut them down so they didn't regenerate the life that they had before, and they became deserts. If you think about it that way, you say, that's what we're doing down in the Amazon, that's what we're doing around the world. And maybe that's not going to be so healthy for our country. And you say, well, 10,000 years is a long time. We don't have to worry about it. But I think we do with this many species endangered. What about the human physical makeup indicates that we are most adapted to eat plants. Our teeth show us that we're made to eat plants. They look like elephant and gorilla teeth. Mine do anyway. I don't know about yours. I don't think yours look like lions, tigers, who are meat eaters. And also, our intestinal length is such. It's long. Long means that it can absorb the nutrients from plants. Short, like lions and tigers, means that they can survive on meat and the carnivore diet, which has become so popular. How do you view transitioning to a plant-based diet? Is it a sacrifice or is it an opportunity? How you think about this in your mind is going to make a huge difference potentially as to whether you can actually do it. If you think about this as a sacrifice, I have to give up this and give up that, and life is miserable because of it, it's not going to work so well. If you think about this is my opportunity to share with my friends and family what a healthy lifestyle is and how we can save our planet. It becomes more of a joy and something that gives you a meaning to wake up for every day, to share your experiences with others. And if you can become convinced that by eating plants, you could help others and save the planet, what choice would you make? And most all of you in the class have made that choice and are working toward that transition. And I want to commend you all for it and thank you for attending these sessions because the more of us there are, the sooner the message will be spread. And that is what I had to say for that. So any thoughts from anybody at this point? I can go on like the broken record. Scott's heard this so many times. I don't know how he can survive it another time, but he manages.
That's great. We're just trying to find more reasons to give people more reasons to make change. Environment's another one.
Yes.
Well, I think we should drive our electric cars to the local farms.
Okay, yeah. That would be, a win-win. I don't know how many people actually have electric cars these days. Congratulations to you. But I would say, I don't know. I don't have a fully electric, it's a hybrid. And I know that the costs are fairly steep for purchasing that. And I know a number of people in the class here would have difficulty transitioning immediately to an electric car.
Soon I think you're going to find in the very future that electric cars are going to cost about the same as any new car. So if you can afford a new car, you can afford an electric car.
Okay, well,
that's in the process.
We're hoping that will happen. What else? Anybody else?
I'm just going to put some resources in the chat box.
Okay, good. I still have a few more videos actually too, but I want to make sure I give you all an opportunity to speak up and share your thoughts. In past classes, we've had people who say, I don't believe those statistics. I think that's not accurate. In recent classes, we haven't had so many of them, but a few years ago, every time we would give this class, there was always someone who was not very comfortable with this concept. And so we keep throwing it out there and offering to kind of discuss alternate points of view. With that said, think about it, come up with them, and get back with me as soon as I get done with our next video here. If I can get into the video, I just have to close this down. There we go. And then close this down. And then I've got to get back to here. So I need to now, I closed out the wrong file, of course. So I need to get back to my talks. One touch, one this, Seagate, talks, and effect on the planet. Okay, let's go on to how much water goes into an 8-ounce steak. Here we go. Okay, next video. Why beef is the worst food for the climate.
The chart I'm building shows the greenhouse gas emissions from producing 1 kilogram of some common foods. In other words, it shows how much they contribute to global climate change. Most fruits and vegetables are down here with relatively low emissions. Poultry and eggs are a little further up. Pig products are here. Coffee and chocolate are a little higher. But all of these pale in comparison to this food. It's the worst thing we eat when it comes to global warming. This is beef. When you only account for the emissions that go into the processing, transportation, packaging, and selling of a food product, the difference between these foods isn't so great. When you add the emissions from growing and processing food for livestock, you can see that animal products have higher emissions than vegetables. But the real gap comes from these two factors: the emissions associated with the farming process and the impact of land use change. Coffee has such a big footprint because of the fertilizers farmers use to grow it, which emit a lot of the greenhouse gas nitrous oxide. The farming process also accounts for most of the disparity between cow and sheep products and everything else. Cows and sheep have to digest food that most animals can't do as well, like grass and tough plant material. Their stomachs are microbe-rich to help them do that through a process called enteric fermentation. The byproduct of this digestion is methane, a powerful greenhouse gas. Some of those emissions come out this way, but 95% come out the front. If you've never heard one of these animals burp, there's an endless supply of YouTube videos for your viewing pleasure.
Really? That was rude, sir.
Jokes aside, though, methane is a huge contributor to climate change. It's the second most emitted greenhouse gas after carbon dioxide. But it traps more heat than carbon dioxide. Its global warming potential over 100 years is 21 times higher. Among human-related activities, enteric fermentation is the biggest contributor to methane emissions globally, more so even than the methane emissions from burning fossil fuels. And it's a big reason why the farming process-related emissions for beef and sheep are so high. The second reason is land use change. Starting in the 1700s, the amount of land developed for humanity's purposes started to skyrocket. Only a tiny amount of this is due to our built environment, like cities, towns, and other infrastructure. A vast majority is for agriculture. And when you divide that up, you see that land for grazing animals far surpasses land for growing crops. Converting all that land to farms to make way for grazing or growing crops releases the carbon that was once stored in trees, other plants, and the soil. By contrast, nuts and citrus fruit and olive oil have negative land use emissions because planting nut and citrus fruit and olive trees is reforesting cropland. But chocolate has a lot of land use emissions because cacao farming results in tropical deforestation in Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America. And grazing animals take up a lot of space compared to crops. 80% of deforestation in the Amazon rainforest, for example, is to make way for cattle ranching. This is how many tons of greenhouse gases per capita we emit through all of our activities. Changing our diet to exclude high-emission foods has the potential to reduce it by 28%, by both reducing emissions and reforesting land. That's more than any other life change we could make. A lot of food emissions are unavoidable. We have to eat. But we do have a choice of what not to eat.
Hopefully that made a little impact on some of you. And then I've got just a couple more videos. You cannot be a non-vegan environmentalist is the next one.
Today we're going to talk about a really inconvenient truth. You cannot be an environmentalist and a non-vegan. Now, in my very first nugget ever, I touched on the environmental impact of the animal products industry. Today we're going to compare the benefits to the environment that the typical going green methods have to the impact that you have by making shifts in your diet. Oftentimes the most passionate, vigilant, and militant environmentalists still eat animal products. Let's take a look at why that is stupid. We're going to focus on the elements of environmentalism that you most often hear about: water, paper, meaning trees, and CO2 emissions. Let's start with water. Now, one of the common water-saving tips that you hear is to get a water-efficient shower head. The typical shower head emits 5 gallons per minute. Most water-efficient shower heads emit 2.5 gallons per minute. Say that you take 10-minute showers every day. You're going to save 9,125 gallons every year. If you take a 15-minute shower every day, you're going to save 13,687.5 gallons every year. The average U.S. citizen eats 185 pounds of meat every year, and 62.4 pounds of that is beef. So every year, the average American is using 156,000 gallons of water for their beef consumption alone. If you didn't eat any meat for an entire year, conservatively, you'd be saving 339,900 gallons. The average American also eats 632 pounds of dairy. Every pound of dairy takes approximately 600 gallons of water. So if you stopped eating dairy for an entire year, you would save 379,200 gallons. Now here's the real testament. If you went an entire year without eating any meat or dairy, you would be saving 719,100 gallons of water for that year. That's the same amount of water as if you didn't shower at all for 53 years if you took a 15-minute shower, or 79 years if you took 10-minute showers. So what's really making the best environmental impact as far as water is concerned? So maybe a full year with no meat or dairy is a little too much for you to handle right now. But what about not eating 1 pound of beef? You'd be saving the same amount of water as if you didn't shower for 100 showers. That's 3.5 months of not showering just for 1 pound of beef. I hope you're starting to see how huge the impact of diet is on the environment. Now it's time for paper. What you most often hear for helping the environment is to start going paperless, and also to recycle whatever paper you do use. On average, a person uses between 5 and 8.51 40-foot trees every year. And if you recycle 1 ton of paper, that's 2,000 pounds. You'll be saving about 17 trees. And now for dietary impact. I'm only going to use the data for beef right now, because it is the meat that's had the most environmental impact studies done. To produce 1 pound of beef, it takes approximately 55 square feet of rainforest, which, depending on the area, is anywhere between 45 and 55 trees. So if you didn't use any paper at all for an entire year, you'd be saving at most 8.51 trees. Whereas if you avoid just 1 pound of beef, you're saving 45 to 55 trees. Now, if you went an entire year without eating any beef, you'd be saving 3,432 trees. By not eating beef for an entire year, and we're not even talking about any other animal products at this point, you would still be saving 3,406.49 more trees than if you didn't use any paper for the entire year and recycled an entire ton. And how about toilet paper? The average US person uses 50 pounds of toilet paper every year. Let's say, dear Americans, that you went an entire year without using any toilet paper. You would be saving a measly 0.425 trees. Now for CO2. The animal products industry is the largest sole contributor to climate change and is responsible for emitting 2,964 million tons of CO2 every year. Now let's compare the CO2 emissions of the average car to that of the meat, dairy, and egg industries. When people talk about saving CO2, you always hear about hybrid cars. The average passenger car is going to emit 5.1 tons of CO2 per year. Now, different hybrid cars have different CO2 emissions. If you decided to drive a Prius instead of your average car, you'd be saving 1.7 tons of CO2 every year, whereas going a year without just beef saves 5.5 tons of CO2. And now for a simplified version, you could drive about 600 miles from the CO2 that's produced by 1 pound of beef. Now, believe it or not, this is the tip of the iceberg. We're not even going to go into nitrogen from fertilizer and feed production, the issue of methane, or the over 500 million tons of fecal matter produced by livestock every year. In summary, never showering, never using paper, never using toilet paper, recycling an entire ton of paper, and never driving don't even come close to making the environmental impact of switching to a vegan diet. Now, it doesn't have to be all at once. Every little bit counts. Thanks for sticking with me through all the numbers. This nugget took a lot of time and research, so please like it, share it, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And also visit bitesizevegan.com and subscribe to the RSS feed.
Okay. And one last, how to change your diet to fight climate change.
Want to cut carbs? Why not cut carbon instead? Eating clean and green isn't just great for your health. It's one of the single biggest things you can do to fight the climate crisis. Changing our diets is more than a fad, it's a necessity. Our sprawling modern system of food production generates a quarter of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. The world's top 5 meat and dairy producers combined emit more greenhouse gases in their entire supply chain than ExxonMobil, Shell, or BP. In the continental US, raising animals for food takes up nearly half of all land. 36% of all corn and 70% of all soy grown is used just to feed livestock. When you factor in feed, transport, and animal byproducts, livestock produces up to 51% of all greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. And agriculture is responsible for 75% of global deforestation. But some forms of meat are far worse than others. Hands down, beef is the worst. Meat and dairy produce roughly the same emissions as all cars, trucks, airplanes, and ships combined. Cows aren't just energy intensive to feed and maintain. Livestock burps and farts are responsible for over 27% of methane emissions in the US. And methane is over 80 times more powerful than CO2. Even grass-fed beef can be worse for the climate because the cows spend more time burping up methane due to their longer lifespans. Lamb and farmed crustaceans also have big footprints. Pork and poultry are somewhere in the middle. And cheese production emits even more greenhouse gases than chicken. So how can we make our diets climate friendly? There are lots of different options. Just cutting down on meat will have a substantial impact on the planet and our health. North Americans eat 6 times the medically recommended amount of red meat. But with tons of new alternatives to meat, it's easier than ever to reduce our consumption. Eating a plant-based diet also reduces our risk of diabetes, heart disease, and chronic illness. If everyone switched to a simple Mediterranean diet, rich in nuts and beans, sustainably caught fish, chicken once a week, and red meat once a month, it would be the equivalent of eliminating 1 billion polluting cars. If you want to make an even bigger impact, try going vegetarian. If everyone were to go vegetarian, food-related emissions worldwide would go down as much as 63%. But the single biggest impact would be to go vegan. Simply cutting animal products from our diets would reduce our individual carbon footprints from food up to 73%. Going vegan can have an even bigger impact than cutting down on flying or buying an electric car. 1 in 20 Americans are already meat-free. No single diet is right for everybody, but by paying attention to what we eat, we can go a long way towards fixing the planet. And you can help by putting down your knife and picking up your fork.
I have a few more videos for the fun of it, but I'm going to stop and go back to our conversation, see if there are comments from people, see what you liked, what you didn't like, see if you have any other thoughts of things that you do like that we didn't talk about. It's up to you. Fire away. Don't be shy.
I like the material. I believe the statistics, and I really appreciate your positive outlook, but I don't have the faith in the American political system. I don't think we have the time to wait for people to step up and vote for good things. I see the way the electorate operates is mostly voting against things they hate.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just too much apathy and cynicism out there. Too many people who don't even vote at all, and others who think their vote makes no difference because all politicians are crooked or some other generalization like that. It's just hard to be hopeful.
I've had similar thoughts at times. And I have to kind of fight the urge to throw up my hands and say, there's nothing we can do. And I kind of come back to the conclusion, I just have to do something to keep myself going. Anybody else have thoughts? I appreciate you bringing that up because all of us, I'm sure, have had similar thoughts as you have. It's been very frustrating, particularly over these last few years. Anyone else have kids or anyone who's standing in line who have that gave you hope, for change? Grandkids? We're all like lemmings that are going to go off the cliff together, perhaps.
Well, Charlie, I was thinking you said you apologized to the group of kids you were talking to because we older folks have created the problem, but I also feel like, look at what we're doing right here. And Eddie, is it Eddie? Yeah, I same thing. I appreciate what you brought up, and I feel just like Charlie. If I let myself, I'm just gonna tank because there is a lot of sadness and despair. But we right here are doing something, in this group every week, and with what we're doing, I feel like I can do it in my community because it does feel difficult with the national politics, but we're doing something right here. And I'm so glad.
That's great. And we're working on the powers that be as well. I mean, just as an example, if you think about, you don't ever hear this. I mentioned in my newsletter on Sunday that, it's kind of political suicide. You don't hear politicians talking about changing diet for the environment because that's political suicide because they get so much money. There's so much power and money in the lobbyists and the meat and dairy and egg industries have so much power and money that they get a lot, the politicians get a lot of money from them. And so they aren't going to talk about that. So they focus on fossil fuels and, wind energy and solar energy and all these other things, which are important pieces to the puzzle as well. But you don't hear them talk about changing diet and how such an impact on the environment, as much, if not more than the fossil fuels and the other alternative energies. But then, so so we got to work on that, which is an uphill battle. But I think the other thing, because even like the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, who I'm board certified with, so I was at the conference when I got board certified in October 2019, and that's when Dr. John McDougall received the Luminary Award at that conference. And so he was there, and I watched him speak, and heard later that the only reason he agreed to speak at that conference to get the award is if they gave him a few minutes to talk about the environment. And he actually talked for like 20 minutes just on the environment. He kind of went over his allotted time. But what I thought was amazing was that he challenged the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, because they don't talk, in ACLM, we aren't really talking, we're just talking about health, and because that's what we're focused on as that organization. But he actually challenged that organization to start addressing climate change and the environment, and because that's just another reason to make the changes. And so it was kind of, I almost put it was kind of some awkwardness in the room. There was over 1,000 people in the room, and there was kind of almost some awkwardness to the powers that be there, because it's like something that they've never really addressed, and he challenged them. And now over the last, since October 2019, you actually are starting to hear the ACLM start to talk a little bit about environment. And because it's like a lot of times when you hear about debates about different diets, like if you ever watch debates about keto and low carb versus plant-based, Mediterranean, all these different diets and all the nutritional science realm, one of the things that the meat heavy diets proponents actually say before they do any kind of debates on the science is they actually say you can't bring up environment because it's such a loss for them. And so they actually have, before these debates happen, they actually say you can't ever bring up anything to do with the environment, and and so they agree to that because they want to have the scientific debate. But it's like, well, why not? That's a very important aspect. So even if, let's just say, going low carb keto did show to reverse heart disease, which it hasn't shown that, actually shows to increase heart disease. But if, let's just say for sake of argument, that it was a healthy way to eat and it was good for health, it's not sustainable. It's not good. It's not going to be sustainable to feed the planet, to all the people. It's not sustainable to help with our problems with climate change. And so it's just another reason. That's why I think John McDougall now, he spent 50 plus years talking about eating a whole food plant-based diet. Now he's, in his mid 70s, and he's like, hey, I really care about this issue with the environment. So now he's really put a lot of passion into that aspect, as Charlie mentioned earlier.
I've noticed a huge difference over the last couple years in terms of discussion on climate change and food, where none of that was in the discussion 10 years ago when I transitioned. So I have hope that we can make the change. Whether we do it soon enough or not, I'm not sure, but I just have to keep up that hope.
I think I second what Debbie was saying too, here on the community level. Think about all the people that we've been able to, even if they're not 100% plant-based, think of all the people in Eugene Springfield community that are eating less meat and dairy because of coming to these classes, and that's going to have an impact. It has a huge, you saw the statistics. Think of how much land we've saved, how much water we've saved, everything that we've done just in our little group here. That's huge. And then if we can get, spread that more and more people, and then people like, ACLM and medical schools, and we start to actually include that, hey, also, not only is this healthy for you and going to reduce the healthcare costs and all these other things we talk about in these classes, it's also going to be good for the environment as well. And so that, as that grows and spreads, it's just, so I have hope as well. I don't know if it's going to be in time because we're already seeing the damage, and we're almost getting close to the point of no return. But we have to do something, and each of us have some power in that, based on what we choose to eat.
So let me go back to the gallery view here. I see a familiar face who's in the background there. Lisa, you've been away for a long time, studying hard. I hope everything went well, and that you're doing well after being incognito for a while.
Hello, yes, I've been gone a long time and I've missed all of you here. I just took both of my board exams, and so I have like a week of vacation before I start rotations, and I'm trying to enjoy every second of it. But I just hopped on for a few minutes, and I think you were talking about the environment and taking care of it, and I think that there are a lot of my colleagues and classmates who've started a lot of gardening groups for kids and for the Pomona community in LA. And people are very excited about it. Kids are very excited about it. And I think it's going to be a good thing that carries on for a while. So your hope is not misplaced, I hope, at least. But
okay, well, that we needed to hear a little bit of that, because I apologize to the high school kids and junior high today that my generation has not done much of anything except talk, not much, no action. And I'm hoping your generation has the action, and through people like yourself, it's happening, and I hope enough jump on board.
Oh, I definitely think it's happening. So I think it'll just continue.
Okay, Eddie, there you go. You're hearing from the young ones. Maybe they will make the difference. Anyway, happy to have you back, Lisa, and good luck on your rotations, and talk with you some more as time goes on. Anybody else have anything to donate? Not an organ or anything like that, but just trying to be funny.
But I thought it was interesting. Maybe you can tell us, or maybe you already did last week because I missed, but Angela was saying that when you guys were in England, you guys found out 20% of the population identifies as vegan or whole food plant-based.
That's correct. 25% is the national statistics. And yeah, it was really easy to find. We just, whatever tube stop we got off at, and we were looking at some other sites and stuff, we're like, okay, we put in our phone, plant-based restaurant, and there would be one within walking distance of anywhere we were. So it was great. We had, not just plant-based options at a restaurant, but a whole entire restaurant that's all plant-based. So it's really easy to eat this way in the United Kingdom, because yeah, they have so many more people. I think in the last one of the videos, they said only, is it 1 in 20 are either vegetarian or vegan here. So that's what, 5%. So it's 5% versus 25%. That's a pretty big difference.
What do you attribute that to? Did you get any idea over there? What are they doing?
I think I think just kind of the knowledge that, I think the health knowledge and just everything. I think that it's just probably more responsible, kind of more common sense. It's like, if you talk to the younger people about this, it's like, well, duh. It's like, it's better for your health, better for the environment, things like that. Well, it's like, it just kind of makes sense to them. And and social justice and animal rights and cruelty and things like that, it just, to the younger generation, seems like it's more common sense. Whereas people my age and older, I think it's more, you have to do a little more convincing, because we had so many years that we were just brainwashed as to, oh, this is just what we were raised on. This is just how it is. This is what's healthy. All those nutritional myths. We kind of, lived a whole life with that, with that under that spell, basically, that this is just the way it is. But now I know just the younger generation just seems to get it, that it's like, well, it just kind of makes sense. It's, you don't have to stretch the mind that much to figure that out. And then I think other things, like, I know when I was one of my bike tours I was on a few years ago, I ran into a guy that he was a little bit younger than me, probably in his 30s, and he had ridden his bike all over the world. I think he was from Belgium. He was from Belgium, and he had ridden on every continent in the world. He'd been up and down to Tierra del Fuego in South America, everywhere on Earth, pretty much Asia. He'd ridden his bike all over the world, and I stayed in this kind of hiker-biker camp with him, and we had a lot of. It was just the two of us there. We did a lot of talking, and I think kind of I asked him, because I told him all about nutrition and stuff what I was up to, and this is about 3 or 4 years ago. And he said that, I asked him what he thought was the difference in America versus other places, and he was vegetarian himself, and I was like asking him what he thought, with his travels. And some of the wisdom he gave me was that he noticed that a lot of parts of the world there's overweight and obese people everywhere, because they're eating too much rich food, or too much of any food, even if it's a little bit different than what we eat in America. But what he noticed with Americans was that people are not only, there's so many more people that are overweight and obese, but we look so much unhealthier than other parts of the world. So I thought that was kind of interesting, that so other parts of the world where they're still eating meat and dairy and some processed foods, but not to the extent we are here. And because of that, some of the richness of the food, there are still quite a few people that are overweight or obese, not as much as here, but also just that here we just look so much unhealthier. We just look sicker, whereas people are not necessarily they're healthy, but they're healthier is in comparison. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. I guess we're over time.
Yeah.
I just checked that figure about 25% of people in England being not eating meat. According to the Vegan Society there, the figure is closer to 2%. A lot of people have, what's the figure, the 25% is people who are reducing meat consumption.
Oh.
We'll check. I'll have to look at the source. Yeah, I don't know where I read or heard that.
The website is vegansociety.com. That's the British Vegan Society. So I would trust them not to underestimate the number of vegans.
Well, it's just 25% are reducing. Yeah. Well, yeah. All I could say, there's a whole hell of a lot of vegan places over there because I just got back from there. So I was in London for a week.
Oh, that was up as of 2019. It's probably gotten better since then.
Interesting. Well, we're going to follow that and see how it goes. And hopefully we get 25% of our population that starts transitioning. That would be good. Good statistic.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am thinking of Ibsen's play, Enemy of the People. And I think we will eventually come around to the right conclusion, but as the line in the play says, the majority is always right 50 years too late.
Yeah, that is a worry for sure. But hopefully people will, the younger will jump on board soon enough.
I hope so. I don't expect to live long enough to see this, but I'm really worried for my kids and grandkids.
Yep. We'll second that.
Third that.
So anybody else have some last parting thoughts? This has been good. We've enjoyed it. Hope that a few of you had your minds opened a little bit more. And I guess we're good for this session. Next week is going to be a, Scott, you're going to do a kind of a general overview question and answer.
Yeah, just the open forum format for the last 3 weeks, but we can bring up any questions, conversation. I'll just kind of play it by ear, but we won't be able to, as of right now, it doesn't look like we'll be able to record it. So, because Charlie will be gone, but so hopefully we'll get more people that'll come that normally watch the recordings.
Yeah, I hope you all have fun and enjoy it, and we'll come back and tell you about Greece.
Sounds good.
Have a great trip, Charlie.
Have a good trip.
Thank you. So we'll sign off to everybody. Thank you all for coming. It's been fun, and keep at it. Thanks again, Scott.
All right, you too, Charlie. Good night. Thanks, Debbie, Eric, everybody.